ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. The Czech government is facing political pressure over a controversial Bitcoin donation accepted by the Justice Ministry. Now, the uproar has triggered a no-confidence vote in the parliament, raising questions about transparency just months before national elections. To help us understand the broader implications for Czech politics and stability, we're joined by Jan Čulík, senior lecturer at Czech Studies in the University of Glasgow, an expert on Central European affairs. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World. So the most recent development seems to have shown that the Czech government has survived the no-confidence vote. But taking a step back, why has this Bitcoin case sparked such a political storm in the Czech Republic in the first place?
Well, the problem with the Czech Republic is that the government is really quite unpopular. But unfortunately, if I can say this quite succinctly, there's no one to vote for, because the opposition is basically headed by an oligarch, owner of most of the Czech foodstuffs industry, Andrej Babiš. He's also being accused that as a young man he was an informer of the communist secret police. And so you have these two irreconcilable sort of opposites. Mm-hmm. But the population is really quite disillusioned with the government with the centrist coalition government of Petr Fiala, because not only with this Bitcoin affair, but also there are sort of social problems. Mm-hmm. One of these is that it is incredibly difficult in the Czech Republic for young people to acquire apartments. They are incredibly expensive. So there is this issue that very few children are being born because people don't have where to live. There are also other issues. The army, which I suppose with the danger of Russia should be really kind of financed properly and encouraged. So the army is complaining that it's not properly paid. The firemen are not properly paid. The teachers are not properly paid. So, and basically it's quite interesting that this current Prime Minister Petr Fiala is totally non-charismatic. I teach in Brno University on and off, where Petr Fiala is a political scientist. And when he became prime minister, my colleagues said that he's fine and this will be fine. But unfortunately, he can't really sort of address the problems. And then, of course, this Bitcoin affair came into the fore. And the problem is that the ruling coalition is connected with a number of parties. One of them is the Civic Democratic Party, which is a party which dominated, a right-of-center party, which dominated Czech politics after the fall of communism, with this economist, Václav Klaus. They were wanting to be Thatcherite, and they basically said that everything would sort itself out. But it proved itself that they were really quite sort of a group of mafioso corrupt officials. And many critics are now saying that basically the ODS, which is kind of the strongest influence in this current government coalition, is kind of reverting to its mafioso corrupt roots. And of course, that Bitcoin affair basically destroyed their reputation even more. As your viewers know, there was this Minister of Justice, Blažek, who accepted about 1 billion Czech crowns in Bitcoin from some from some criminal, basically, who I suppose hoped to be actually allowed not to be prosecuted for his criminality. This man Blažek has now resigned, but he has been replaced by a new Justice Minister, Eva Decroix, with a French name. But unfortunately, it's turned out that she has been illegally using some kind of university degree. So these little kind of scandals continue. But as I said, it's not very easy who to vote for, because this opposition, Babiš, yesterday in the Czech parliament was talking absolute rubbish. Yet about 30% of the people in the Czech Republic support him, mostly because he's promising to sort of pay for everything, give pensioners higher, more money, give teachers more money, give the army more money, but where is he going to pay for it from? So it's complicated.
All right. So, if what you were saying, according to what you're saying, it does seem like this whole Bitcoin debacle is more like the fire that light the fuel, that diffuse that's already a very unpopular Czech government. But if that is the case, how do we start seeing like the government surviving the no confidence vote? Or perhaps this is just like a sign to come. Do you think that having survived the no confidence vote, there will still be mounting political challenges going forward?
Well, the situation in the Czech parliament is such that this is, of course, the result of the last election, that the opposition can never defeat the ruling government. Basically, there are, the Czech parliament has 200 seats. So in order to defeat the government, you need 101 votes, right? This will never happen because the ruling coalition has 98, or at least this happened with the voting yesterday. The ruling coalition had 98 votes. The opposition that wanted to express distrust in them had 94 votes. Now, this was this Babiš party, ANO, the really extreme right-wing, almost fascist party, SPD, with paradoxically a Japanese leader called Okamura. He is really rabid. And then quite interestingly, the Pirate Party, which is a kind of almost social democratic party, which used to be in the government coalition, but they kicked them out. And there are these voices that actually the Pirate Party could have become a really useful opposition if they actually dissociated themselves originally from the ruling coalition. But unfortunately, they didn't do this. And I was just reading one commentary that he used to vote for the Pirates, but is incredibly disappointed because of their kind of sort of attempts to kind of sleaze up to the ruling coalition and their not very clear situation. So basically, again, what I'm trying to say is that, okay, under the given circumstances, the opposition can never in parliament defeat the ruling coalition. But the problem is what will happen in the October general election, because as it is, the ruling coalition is really quite unpopular. And of course, the Czech voters have this quandary. Reasonable voters, if I may say so, are basically saying, this is terrible, but we will have to vote for that Fiala, for the current coalition, in spite of that Bitcoin affair, because Babiš would be even worse.
All right. So it does seem like the Czech voters are stuck in a catch-22 situation between a rock and a very hard place. Now, so do you think that this, all these development is actually going to, very briefly, going to influence the voter pattern in the next round? Or, like you mentioned, people might still vote in the same government, seeing that there's no better alternatives?
Well, I don't really like to sort of make predictions because the situation is very kind of unstable. But the fact is that the opinion polls give a majority to the Babiš party. And it is mostly, I mean, the people who support the government coalition, who sort of style themselves as pro-Western, are kind of accusing the people who want to vote for Babiš of having these communist tendencies. One thing which I find really quite remarkable, there is a lot of ideological crap in the Czech Republic. Quite a lot of people kind of go on about being against communists, which kind of seems to me like kicking the corpse, because for God's sake, the communist regime fell 36 years ago. So, but nevertheless, there are quite a lot of people who keep going on about it. My criticism would be that if the government was pragmatic and if the government kind of solved people's problems rather than going on about communism, it would be more popular. One example, in one city in the Czech Republic, they have just removed some kind of statue of Soviet soldiers, which of course was there for 35 years after the fall of communism. And this spokesman of this government coalition will say, wonderful, we've removed this Soviet soldier. And somebody's written under it, it would have been much more helpful if we had doctors in this region, if we had psychologists, if we had more teachers, and they actually go on about a bloody statue. So this basically sums it up.
Right, so it probably is going to be more beneficial if the politicians start talking about actual politics. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.